Some of the main motivations behind killers include anger at a perceived sight or an unjust world, sexual gratification, financial gain, perceived moral superiority, or thrill-seeking. But even while in court, most criminals, even if they think they're in the right, do not attempt to justify their heinous actions. But these killers did. In this video, we'll be examining killers who tried to justify their crimes. Ahmad Suradji. Motive: collect the spit of 72 women for a black magic ritual. Ahmad Suradji was born in the North Sumatra region of Indonesia on January 10, 1949, but he would not start committing crimes until he was in his 30s. By this time he was living in Medan, the largest city within the province, and worked as a cattle breeder, as well as a dukun, a type of shaman often associated with roles like traditional healing, spirit mediums, witchcraft, and customs experts. Some believe they possess supernatural powers. As part of his role as a dukun, he was regularly visited by female clients who were looking for advice on how to find good fortune or make their partners faithful to them. But everything changed in 1986. That year, Suradji had a dream in which he was visited by his deceased father. He was told that he would need to find and kill 72 women and drink their saliva as part of a magical ritual that would allow him to become a mystical healer. However, instead of looking for ways to come across the naturally deceased, he decided to speed up the process by murdering the 72 women whose bodies he supposedly needed to fulfill the ritual. He later stated, "My father did not specifically advise me to kill people, so I was thinking it would take ages if I had to wait to get 70 women. I was trying to get it as fast as possible. I took my own initiative to kill." Suradji took advantage of his trusting clients, luring them into a sugarcane field and pretending that it was the first step towards finding a solution for their problems. He would often bury his victims up to the waist before strangling them to death. He would later bury their remains in the same field, with their heads pointing towards his nearby home. He stripped them naked beforehand in an attempt to speed up decomposition. Everything unraveled over a decade later, on April 24, 1997, when a 21-year-old woman named Shri Kamala Dewey asked a 15-year-old rickshaw puller to take her to a dukun. She asked him to keep it a secret and never requested to be picked up. One journalist for the BBC reported that it's likely Suradji got away with the murders for so long because many of his clients were too embarrassed to tell their family and friends where they were going. So the when and where of their disappearances were never known. They simply vanished into thin air one day. 3 days after she vanished, a man stumbled across Shri's grave, which was then dug up by a group of locals whom he alerted. The police were subsequently contacted, and it was only then that the teen rickshaw puller learned of her disappearance. He told the police what he knew, that he'd dropped her off at the home of her daku. He gave them the address, which was the home of Suradji, and investigators visited him for questioning. The 48-year-old initially denied involvement in the case. The police then searched his home and found that he had stashed away Shri's handbag, dress and bracelet, which led them to arrest him. He finally confessed while in custody, revealing that he'd killed 42 women and girls in exactly the same way. An excavation of the sugarcane field was later carried out, which found that indeed 42 bodies had been buried there. Some were so badly decomposed that they could not be identified. During his interrogation with the police, Suradji explained the dream that he had had and described the ritualistic manner in which he killed his victims. He would drink their saliva after strangling them to death. He never offered up an apology for what he'd done or admitted that the murders were a mistake. Instead, he stood by his explanation that he needed to complete the murders in order to become a powerful healer. His trial began on December 11, 1997. Suradji still maintained his innocence. His 3 wives, who were all sisters, were also arrested for assisting in the murders and helping to hide the bodies. One of the wives was tried as an accomplice. The women reportedly stated that they only confessed to such crimes after being subjected to torture at the hands of the police. Following a lengthy trial, Suradji was found guilty on April 27, 1998. He was given a sentence of death by firing squad. The wife who had been tried as an accomplice was also convicted and sentenced to death, but her sentence was later commuted to life in prison. Shortly before his death, he asked to see his first wife, a wish that was granted to him. He later stated, "The black magic came from God. I don't have it anymore. I have repented. I hope I have a chance to live." Suradji's plea for leniency was rejected, and he was executed by firing squad on July 10, 2008. His body was meant to be buried in a public cemetery in the following days, but the event was cancelled by the authorities after they learned that as many as 100 relatives of his victims planned to disrupt it. Saeed Hanaei. Motive: kill as many prostitutes as possible to clean the streets. Saeed Hanaei was born sometime in 1962 in what was then known as the Imperial State of Iran. In later interviews, Hanaei claimed that his mother was a violent woman, subjecting him to physical and emotional cruelty in his youth. He described how she would sometimes try and bite chunks of his flesh off and would use her fingernails to scratch him so deeply that he bled. Interviewers later described Hanaei as being honest and simple, but not very intelligent. By the time he started killing in 2000, he was married and a father to 3 children. He'd served as a volunteer during the Iran-Iraq War and was now working in construction. Little other details are available on his life outside of his crimes. Hanaei committed his first murder on August 7, 2000, when he killed 30-year-old Asara Karimpour. She would be the first in a string of 16 women murdered between then and July 2001. The murders became known as the Spider Killings by the Iranian media because the killer was known to lure women into his home, strangle them to death and dump their bodies afterwards. The vast majority of his victims were female sex workers who operated within the city of Mashhad, a particular religious and holy area of the country. Many of his victims were also struggling with substance abuse and left behind children after they perished. Hanaei's second victim was found strangled to death near some tomato bushes inside the city on August 10th, and the following day, Fariba Ramapur was found deceased in a yellow burlap sack, having been asphyxiated. For months, the case grew quiet, but the spider killer struck again in January the following year, when the body of a woman was discovered dead in Mashhad. 27-year-old Sarah Rahmani was found deceased on February 16th, and later that month on the 29th, 45-year-old Azam Abdi's body was located. Between March 19th and August 2001, a further 10 victims were killed. Many were strangled with their own scarves and left wearing or wrapped in veils and chadors, flowing black garments that cover a woman from her head to her feet. Hanaei was only arrested after the Iranian government stepped in. High-ranking security and intelligence officials were brought in to find and apprehend the perpetrator of the crimes. As before this, according to the New York Times, many Iranians believed that the police had been lax and slow to act because they were controlled by religious hardliners. According to reports, Hanaei confessed to the murders of 16 women after being confronted by the police. He subsequently smiled for photographers and defended his actions proudly. He claimed that he was simply cleansing the city of moral corruption, telling the court that he began killing after his wife was mistaken for a sex worker, and staunchly believed that the murder of sex workers was a religious obligation. He stated, "I realized God looked favorably on me, that he had taken notice of my work." In an interview before his arrest, he also noted that he killed the women for the sake of God and for the protection of my religion, because they were prostitutes and were corrupting other people. Hanaei added that he drove around on his motorcycle to scout about for his target and brought them to his house when his wife and children weren't home. He then strangled them with their headscarves, wrapped their bodies and dumped them in the streets. His lawyers later argued in court that he deserved leniency, citing what the Guardian described as a vague provision in Iranian and Islamic law that labels sinners as a waste of blood. Sadly, many continued to defend his actions. One newspaper wrote, "Who is it to be judged? those who look to eradicate the sickness of those who stand by the root of corruption. Hanaei's friends also supported what he did, with one stating with a laugh, "He did the right thing, he should have continued." Chillingly, even his own son, who was 14 at the time, defended his father. He claimed that his dad was cleaning the country of the corruption of the earth, and added, "If they kill him tomorrow, dozens will replace him. Since his arrest, 10 or 20 people have asked me to continue what my dad was doing. I say, let's wait and see." One journalist, Roya Marimi, looked into Hanaei and his background following the arrest, and observed that he had initially started looking for men who were paying the sex workers for their services. However, this resulted in him being assaulted by those men. She added, so he turns to the people who do not have the power to fight back. Hanaei continued to defend and justify his actions until the very end, stating in an interview, "I wouldn't have been bothered even if I had killed 150 women, because I wanted to clean the holy city of Masad from corrupt women and prostitutes." He was found guilty on 16 counts of murder and sentenced to death. Iranian-Canadian filmmaker Mazia Bari created a documentary about Hanaei named "Among Came a Spider" that was released in 2003. He told The Guardian when the time came for him to be executed, Hanaei was shocked and angry. Mazia stated, even until the last second before his execution, Hanaei thought someone in the government would come to save him. He was hanged on April 8, 2002, in Mashhad prison. Joanna Dennehy. Motive: to simply see if she could kill someone. Joanna Dennehy was born on August 29, 1982, in St Albans, Herefordshire, England. Those who knew her in childhood described her as intelligent and well-mannered, though from a young age she showed signs of rebellion and emotional instability. By her teenage years, Dennehy had begun drinking heavily and running away from home, and she later became involved with drugs and petty crime. She eventually entered into a long-term relationship and had 2 children, but the family life she built was short-lived. After years of erratic behaviour, Joanna abandoned her children and drifted into a transient existence, spending time between Peterborough and Hereford. Between March and April of 2013, Joanna embarked on what would become one of Britain's most shocking killing sprees. Over the course of 10 days, she murdered 3 men: Lucas Slabozewski, 31, Kevin Lee, 48, and her housemate John Chapman, 56. All 3 victims were stabbed to death before being dumped in ditches around Peterborough. After these killings, Joanna and her accomplice Gary Stretch drove more than 100 miles to Hereford, where she randomly attacked 2 other men, Robin Bereza and John Rogers, both of whom miraculously survived, despite severe stab wounds. When Joanna was finally arrested, she reportedly laughed and joked with police officers. In custody, she expressed no remorse, and in fact appeared to take pride in what she had done. Psychiatrists who later examined her described her as suffering from antisocial, borderline, and psychopathic personality disorders, though she was found legally sane and fit to stand trial. In court, Joanna's behaviour was erratic, mocking and disturbingly detached. She often smiled, laughed, and at times appeared bored as the evidence against her was read aloud. When the judge asked if she was guilty, Joanna interrupted her own lawyer and replied calmly, "I'm guilty, I'm a murderer." Yet, what stood out most was how she tried to justify her actions. Joanna claimed that she had killed for fun, and later told psychiatrists that she wanted to prove that she could take control over life and death. She said she committed the murders to see if I was as cold as I thought I was. She described the murders as something she did to feel alive, comparing herself to a female Bonnie from Bonnie and Clyde. During her trial, she mocked both the prosecution and her accomplices, stating that she didn't want to kill women, only men, because it was more fun. Joanna was convicted of 3 murders and 2 attempted murders in November 2013. The judge described her crimes as sadistic and truly terrifying. She was sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole, making her one of only a handful of women in British history to receive such a sentence. Even after her conviction, Joanna continued to justify what she had done. She described killing as Moorish and said she felt no guilt because her victims were weak. In interviews and prison reports, She maintained that she did not regret her actions, only that she was caught. Today, Joanna Dennehy remains one of Britain's most notorious and unsettling modern killers. A woman who not only murdered without remorse, but sought to rationalize her brutality as a form of self-empowerment. So that's it for this video. Thanks for watching Murderous Minds. Stay safe out there, and I'll see you next time.